right now.
4-time Angler of the Year.
Oh my gosh, I'm shaking like a leaf.
Former FLW Cup champion.
That's what I'm talking about.
God has blessed me so tremendously in my career.
Welcome everyone to David Dudley Outdoors. And of all the videos that I've done, of course you guys have been on my channel for a long time. We've done fishing videos, hack videos. We've done a lot of things. But there's always these phone calls. There's always these friends of mine that I talk to and get into deep discussions that I wish that you guys could hear a lot of. And guess what? Today, you're going to hear a discussion between me and Rob Newell. If you do not know Rob Newell, I'm just going to give you just a little brief on how awesome of a writer he is. Number one, he's a freelance writer. He's a reporter, a photographer, and he's been doing it for 20 years. Rob has followed not only my career, but Rob has followed everybody in the fishing industry. He gets access to talk to them on the phone. He knows them personally, and he is a on-the-water reporter for the Bass Pro Tour, and he still does a lot of content. You know, he actually ghost writes for a lot of people, and I'm not going to tell you who he writes for. So if you actually are looking for some ghost writing, some great content, I'll put a link in the description below how you can get a hold of Rob, and he can help you out as far as keeping your sponsors happy, writing some stuff, getting you in the media. He's got access to it. So one thing I love about Rob, and you're going to see this here today, when we talk, this is not your ABCD. This is like calculus of a discussion. And that's why I invited Rob in. This is not going to be nuts and bolts of, hey, let's just talk about Angler of the Year. We're about to get into some deep, deep discussion of a topic that I think is interesting. And the topic of the day is definitely going to be AOY and ages of Angler of the Years. And what got me to thinking this was I just wanted to know where an angler peaks at. You know, I wanted to know, is there a rise in basketball or football, you got physical ability that could limit you. So, you know, you're going to have a peak and you're going to have a fall. In fishing, it's not as much physical activity. I've always been intrigued. What does a fisherman lose in his mind? What is it? What's that it factor that maybe makes him go down or makes him go up? And Rob gets the chance to, at over 20 years, to have talked to a lot of people. It's incredible the way he thinks. I mean, he is a phone call that's not 10 minutes. Every time we talk, it's a long time. So, Rob, my question is this. Do you think, what age do you think a angler of the year is, a fisherman at the peak of his career, what do you think the average age of an angler of the year is? Because I have it in math right here, but I want to know what your thoughts are on ages of Angler of the Years.
You bet, Dudley. First of all, thanks for having me on. You know, I think our relationship goes on 20 years now. I first interviewed you when you won the M1 and then the Forest Wood Cup, and you won like $1 bazillion in the course of a year or so way back in 2003. So, and we have had some epic phone calls over the years, 2-hour long conversations. You're an ultimate student of the game. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Your mind thinks we've compared fishing to golf and fishing to chess and fishing to playing musical instruments. I mean, you know, just the art, when you get to fishing at this level, it definitely is at another place. So thanks for having me on. I know you got your cheat sheet there. You sent me a picture of it, so I kind of know. It looks like you took BASS Angler of the Years and FLW Angler of the Year guys. Went back 10 years, also included the 2 Angler of the Years from the MLF, and you came up with an average number there. The number was a little higher than I thought. I was going to put it right at about 39 to 40. Mm-hmm. That was going to be my guess for the average.
Right. And again, this is a 10-year average, guys. So he mentioned, and I failed to do that. So I only went back 10 years because things have evolved so much in the last 10 years where we have younger anglers, of course, coming in, then the older generation. And so the average age is 43.7. 43.7 is the average age of an angler of the year. And I think that is just blows my mind. So
why does that blow your mind?
I think you in the last 10 years there's been all this hype about the younger generation, and yes, I think for the average age of in the last 10 years, the younger generation has brought the average age of a fisherman down. But what's so cool is you hear like Jacob Wheeler, like Brandon Polinick. You got some young guns who are just doing incredible, Jordan Lee, who are doing incredible things in the fishing industry, but yet to have Angler of the Year belts, it was fascinating to me that still is the older, wiser generation able to maintain a, level of focus and concentration better than the younger generation. What do you think about that? I mean,
Well, I'll tell you how I came up with my 39 to 40. I cheated a little bit. I went back and looked up the youngest guy to ever win an Angler of the Year in history, not just on your 10-year chart. Van Dam, I believe it was, he was 25.
Wow.
And then our oldest Angler of the Year just happened with Clark Winlet over at the Bassmaster Elite Series, 54 years old. I combined those two, divided by 2. It came up with 39 to 40. And that the way I've observed dozens and dozens and dozens of top anglers throughout their career. I've seen the young guys come in. I saw you come in. I've seen them evolve. And what I've always noticed, and it's not to the number, but generally you talked about peaks, how in professional sports there's a peak for a guy. Fishing has what I've observed basically 2 peaks in a guy's career. The first one is when he first comes on the scene. I mean, and you know what this is like. He's in his 20s. He's full of high-octane fuel and vinegar. The old adage, eat, sleep, fish, that's all he does. He camps in the back of his truck. He practices 17 hours a day, pre-practices. It is a total dedication, commitment, almost like on a religious level of being on the water all the time. Guy comes in his 20s, 23 to 28, somewhere in there, blows the doors off the place. We can think of so many examples of this going back to Van Dam. I mean, yourself when you came in when you were in your 20s, Brian Thrift, Jordan Lee now. I mean, so what happens is this young guy comes on the scene, wins 2 or 3 tournaments, wins an AOY, gets the world's attention like, hey, I'm here to stay. Gets on a big roll, one of those 2 or 3 tournament rolls, right? And then he gets sponsors. You know how this goes, Dudley. Then he gets sponsors, and then a little thing called life starts to catch up. You get married, you have a couple of children, and through that early 30 period, I'm not going to say it's a distraction, but you have little children in the house. You want to spend time with them. All that eat, sleep, fish, it was once dedicated to just being on the water, is now pulled, and like you now have sponsors for the first time in your life.
I'm going to stop you for a second because you are painting the exact script of Jacob Wheeler right now. He just announced yesterday he's only fishing 1 tour. Jacob has fished, I don't know, the Phoenix Tour, he's fished everything he could do, and then just yesterday on Bass Fan, like you said, he's at 31, 32, and then all of a sudden he's like, hey guys, I'm only going to fish the eight events this year. What, Jake? No, so yes, I'm following. So just keep on going. But you're descripting exactly what's unfolding in front of our eyes right now with Jacob Wheeler, the #1 angler in the world.
You'll see a guy once he has young children, just like Jacob. They want to spend time with family. They know these are some precious years, and you'll see them. I'm not going to look. This is not a blanket case. You'll see them not be the dominant force that they were in that 3 or 4 year early period. Sponsor obligations, a lot of other things going on. And then what happens is you start to see kind of a resurrection of that career. Once the kids get older, they now understand they're old enough to understand that dad is a professional fisherman, and they can actually help. The children become helpers of doing, and especially in these days, this with Mason right there doing social media. They become part of the fan club of back when you started in your younger years, you just maybe had your parents or some immediate family. Now you have children. They're like, that's my dad. And when they get to be that 11, 12, 13-year-old, it does something to competitors, to anglers. I want to do this for him. I want to be a superstar again to prove to him he wasn't around when I won whatever at 24 years old.
That's
and
deep.
Now I want him to see what I'm capable of, and then you see that 41, 43, age group resurrection. I call it a resurrection.
Right, yeah.
And that is, Dudley, when they were young, they had just 2 or 3 techniques and they came in, but now you have the more well-rounded guy that's been in a million fishing situations. He has experience on his time. He's like, and so in general, I always see just two peaks that way. That's not always you won Angler of the Years through your 30s. So if you look at your list you got there, you look at the Bassmaster side of that list that you gave me, there's a little bit of a void in the late 30s there.
Hey, so here's the interesting, while we were talking. So let me clarify something. This is Bass and FLW Angler of the Years, but I included the 2 Major League Fishing Angler of the Years, which was Edwin Evers and Jordan Lee. Okay, so
but you're in those 2 exact spots in your life.
So listen, this is why I love Rob, guys. I'm telling you, he just pulls this stuff out that you can't, the normal person. So look. So there's 22 Angler of the Years on this sheet, okay? Because I forgot to include MLF. So there's 22 Angler of the Years. Out of the 22, there's only 7 Angler of the Years in their 30. So that means the majority are 40 years old and older, which is so cool. And then you're talking about every situation may be different, but my kids, so my last Angler of the Year was at 44. My kids started to just kind of push, Dad, you haven't won a tournament in 6 years, right? And so I'm listening to you talk about this second peak, and I'm like, that's me right here. That's me. My kids were giving me a hard time, and it was like, and here's the thing, I don't so I won my 4th Angler Year at 44. And it's like, did I focus harder that year? Did I have to have motivation like my kids saying, Dad, basically you're going downhill. Why ain't you won anything? Why have you done? And that was just, that's the stuff that I think for looking at the average age of 43, let me ask you this question. Do you ever, we got 2 in their 20s, do you ever think we'll see a Tiger Woods run? Do you ever think we'll see a 2-time Angler of the Year in their 20s? 2-time, not 1 time, not a one-hit wonder, and I'm not calling them wonders, but a 2-time in their 20s.
I'd have to go back and look. I mean, I'm going beyond your 10-year thing, but I know Kevin when he was 25. I don't know when his next one was after that. I mean, he's won like 7 of them.
I know.
But I think there was a little bit of a gap there. But in looking into the future,
yeah,
it's totally possible because
dang,
man, the way the game is changing. This is, you kind of brought it up in the beginning there that this is it's starting to look more and more like a young man's game. And the thing about that is the reason I think that is in the last 10 years is because the way it looks, why it looks that way is because of all the new format changes we have. It's a faster paced game, and the youth just embraces all that kind of change. When all the changes came around that brought about by MLF, it was the younger set that embraced it the most. I mean, the Wheelers, the Connells, they didn't flinch. They weren't like, I liked it when we fished the same lake all 6 days or whatever. They're like, sure, take me to another lake. It doesn't bother me.
Do you think this? I can agree for sure, but think about this. What's interesting though is that I will agree that the average age of the fisherman is getting younger, but still, at the end of the season, a 43-year-old man is still gonna say, y'all might be young, I still got you. And what do you think that is? What do you think it is in that older generation? It's pretty obvious you can't have a hiccup. The younger generation are, wild and, exuberating, got great finishes here, but then you'll see them bomb, and it's angler of the year is that, slow and steady wins the race, right? And that's what it is. I agree, but what do you think is the it factor for a 43-year-old versus a 30-year-old? Or in their 30s, what is that it factor?
Well, the it factor backs up even before you start talking about angler of the year races. Really, where you look at any whether it's bass or FLW, you look at the lists there. What's amazing about angler of the year winners is how repetitive they are. It's amazing to me that if you think about FLWs, it's been around 21 years, and you have 4 guys that have won over half of those titles. Yourself,
Clark
Winlet,
yeah,
Morgan, Thrift. Between you 4 guys, y'all own 12 or 13 of the 20 titles.
Yeah.
Okay, and that comes because of the fishermen. It starts with the fishermen. We're talking about guys that you want to talk about the it factor. The it factor leads to angler of the year victories, but the it factor is way before that. And the it factor is it's things like and you're so capable of it. You watch Andy Morgan, you watch guys. The it factor is basically this. I'll try and sum it up as quick as I can. It's somebody that, it's a guy like Aaron Martins that they have a sixth sense, man. That is the part of the sport I like. Whether guys want to admit this or not, in this sport, there are just certain anglers gifted with something special that other people don't have. It's period. There's no debate about that. There are certain anglers that have an instinct, that have a feel. It's the 4th day of a long tournament. They started off good down on the south end of Okeechobee, but the wind has now come up down there, trashed everything. They know they don't even need to go down there. They just come off of the fly, go to the North Shore. It's just, by the time you start getting into, because in order to get to Angler of the Year, you got to fish a lot of 3 and 4, not days 3 and 4 in those events. Mm-hmm. Okay. Those are the times at which the field has changed the most. You're catching a big bag on the first day of the event that's all to some degree. It's predetermined in that you kind of already know where you're going to go. You know what you're going to do. But by day 3, fishing pressure conditions, it's all changed. the best in this business, when that time comes, there's nobody that tells them where to go or what to do. They just know. They can step out into the morning, smell the wind, feel the wind, look at the wind, feel the humidity, look at the water, and just know how to make the changes at the very end of that tournament to close it for good points to close an angler's race.
Let me tell you this. If you could see my shirt, I just got goosebumps thinking about my last. It was because that's why I love you, Rob, man. You just, you can speak the things that the average person can't think of or see. But listening to you, it's like my fourth angle of the year. I did things, and it was like deja vu. It was like I made an adjustment, and it was like I remember that feeling. I remember that. I don't know what it was. It was like like when I was number one in the world for I think 2 years. It was like I remember that. Like I remember it was like I was moving here, moving there, and it was like deja vu. And I told my wife that. I was like, when I said I did something today, Angela, that was like I just felt so good. And I think, why did I lose it? And I still, and I've only missed a championship twice in my 26-year career in whatever league I'm fishing. And I'm not saying that because whatever, but I still have been fishing good. But what we're talking about is these peak anglers, the elite anglers who, right. Andy Morgan's, the repeat angler of the year fisherman is the Sixth Sense guys that you're talking about. The guys who have the it factor that just can smell it, and seek it out. And I think a little bit of how does a big buck get big, and how does he grow to a big size? He's pretty smart, right? And the young teenagers or the young deer are pretty smart, but yet they slip up and do one bad mistake, enter a field, gotcha. You see what I'm saying? And it's that younger field that are got phenomenal genes, like incredible fishermen's getting top tens, and you're like, oh my gosh, he is on fire. But yet at the end of the year, here comes the old 40-year-olds who just, you know what I'm saying? The older, wiser ones that are still saying, you may have won 2 tournaments this year. I still got you, though, on average, And I just, to me, it was encouraging, okay? When I crunched the numbers, I was actually nervous. Like, I was like, am I going to be past my prime, like, 8 years or 10 years? And then I crunched numbers, did it twice on the calculator, and I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, I'm not over the hill. I'm 45. I'm kind of there. And I look at, actually, this is pretty interesting if you look at the numbers. And again, guys, this is the last 10 years. Edwin Evers was 46. Ron Nelson, 45. Clark Winlet. Okay, gosh, we got to talk 54. And 50, guys, 54 is not old, but we're just talking in relatively fishing anglers and trying to figure out age. So, Clark, if you're watching this, you are not old. You're a 54-year-old young man. So, we got a 54, but interesting enough, Mark Rose was 46. We don't have a 47, 48, 49, 50. So, it actually goes from 46 to 54. What do you think that gap is?
Well, first of all, I got to stop on Clark for just a minute because Clark's a good example of what we were just previously talking about. Clark, I knew him a long time, same kind of thing. Followed his career a long time back when he was the Kellogg's kid back in the golden days of FLW. and just a relentless performer. And he enjoyed fishing FLW. He was there a long time, had a nice little sponsor set. Everything was good. And, back in 18 or 19, MLF came along, changed the fishing world a little bit. Some guys had to change organizations. And I think Clark was invited over to the elites. And I remember we had a conversation. He just said, I don't know about, I liked where I was fishing. I liked what I was doing. And I said, it doesn't matter. When you're the kind of caliber fisherman you are, it can't help itself. You're going to perform no matter where you're at. And sure enough, he performed this year. If my math is correct and my research is correct, he's the oldest angler of the year that there is in history. Mm-hmm. And also with that win, Dudley, Winlet joins a very, very rarefied air of people that have won the Angler of the Year across both BASS and FLW. Now that is, I'm supposed to be a writer, I start to lose words for that. You have, repetitive winners on both sides. That makes its case on its own. Mm-hmm. But when you have a guy that wins across both, and the ones I have, and I might be leaving one out, and I know there's always comments below and stuff. If somebody knows I've left one out, please fire me up. I want to know about it. Van Dam's won across both. Greg Hackney has won across both platforms. Jay Ellis. We have Winlet. You got anybody else? We still got one.
I think it's Davey Hyde, isn't it? No?
I don't. Davey has won a couple times at on the Bass. I don't. It might be Height, but I do know Denny Brower.
He's won on both sides.
Yes. Yeah, he's been. I mean, and so that's let's take a look at that. Van Dam, Hackney, Ellis, Brower, Winlet. That's 5 guys. There might be a 6th one. That to me is an incredible class of guys and I mean, some guys have never had that opportunity because they've been dedicated to one organization all their life.
That's right.
And I'm just saying, in the history of our sport, guys that have fished 2 tours at one time in their career, to be able to do that on both sides is just, it just goes to show.
One thing I want to say also about Angler of the Year, Bass has. This might ruffle some feathers. I don't know. So Bass has always been on the lower spectrum of anglers. Okay. So what I mean by that is this: they were once called the Elite 50s. Remember, it was BP Top 100s when I first started fishing bass. So BP Top 100s. Then they went to, I forgot the catchy name, but then they dropped it all the way down to 50 anglers. Remember that? And then now they bumped it back up, in the last years to 100 anglers. Now, let's go back to FLW side. My 4 Angler of the Years, 3 of those come at 200. Well, 2008 when I won Angler of the Year, that was 275 anglers to win Angler of the Year. You okay? So yeah. So we're talking. Okay. It's hard to dominate or to show in stats. So if when you look at anglers who've got top 10s in 2009, 2010, okay, go back. That's 250 to 75 anglers, and you top 10'd it. Yeah, you're in the top 3%. Let's go back to the elite, the E50s and, BP top 100s. These repetitive Angler of the Years and these wins and I say only, but they still beating some guys that are against a lesser field. So if you were to look at Angler of the Year stats and comparing Bass to FLW, which is harder, 100 guys or 275? Okay, yeah, I'll agree to maintain that position of 275 because what happens is, and Rob, you know it, is that 275 to 250, even 175, trumps your instincts as a fisherman because you can't adjust, you can't move, and you can't do what the sixth sense is telling you. And when you go to do the sixth sense, you're like, I can't. Dang, it's a boat. I can't. So you're restricted to your ability, but you still have to adjust to the ability and make the best at what you got. And that's why people come out on top. But yes, to bring to light a little bit is that the Angler of the Years you see on FL, I got 4 of them. And Clark's got 3. Andy, like you said, there's 3 or 4 of us that got half of them. And that's against huge fields. I can't take anything away from the 100 boat fields because they still dominated out of those 100. But guys, if you think that was a fair assumption, comment below. If you don't think it is, suggest what your fair assumption would be. But no telling what they're going to put on.
That's why the guys that have won a ball across both platforms are just so impressive to me because it didn't,
they could have beat basically what you're saying is they could have beat 275 and they could have beat 100.
That's right.
It didn't matter. They were across the board. Basically, they said, guys, it don't matter what league I'm in. I can stomp all 275 of you, and I can stomp all 100 of you. I'm sure they're not saying that, but they in their ability, just like you brought up, they can cross it in both fields in any league they go to, any league. And
you keep bringing up this 43, and like you said, you're starting to get a little worried. Like, am I over the hill in age for an angler? But as we all know, fishermen. I mean, the one great thing about this sport, I mean, these guys, as of like 2020, these guys were still competing. You might have heard some of these names before, Dudley. Rick Clunn. 74 years old, still competing, won an elite series not too long ago. Roland Martin, Dudley, he's 79, 80 years old, still competing.
He competes every day. He's like the Bill, or who's that baseball player, the third baseman that played forever, played for Baltimore Orioles, Cal Ripken, He played however many games. Roland Martin is like the Energizer Bunny of a fisherman. If he's not competing, he's on the water, and he's so intense, and he gets so mad if he doesn't catch. Like, I love it. I hope I'm half of what he is at 80 years old, man.
Well, Larry Nixon, I mean, he's now 69, 70 years old. He's going to compete again. Tommy Martin still does this at 70. I mean, and you're talking about 43. Am I over the hill? Come on, Dudley.
I know.
You got plenty of AOYs left in you, man.
I know, but it just looking at numbers, though, just numbers. I'm like at the.
It's just a number.
Yeah, just a number. Thank you, Clark, for giving me hope. Clark, you gave me hope at 54. That's what I'm talking about.
I got one more quick discussion. We have some guys out there who I feel like have been all around an Angler of the Year title in their career. We have some guys that are due for Angler of the Year wins. And I was going to bring up like Cody Meyer and Brent Ehrler. They have been, I just feel like they are so due. That their age aside, just look at where they have been, up and down the finishes of top 10 points. Those two guys, I could even throw in Ott Defoe. I mean, do you have anybody? I would say Jordan Lee, of course, but he's already he won. He did his thing Bass Pro Tour this year.
That's a great question because the people you mentioned are just phenomenal. Like Cody, and Cody's my traveling partner on the Major League Fishing, so I know Cody very well. And he amazes me in just his ability of how he can adapt. Everybody knows Cody as a finesse guy. He's just incredible with a spinning rod, but that sucker has more bait casters on his deck than most people do. But yet I look at Brent Ehrler and you look at Ott Defoe. These are those guys in that gap of the 30. These are those guys.
Right.
And that's what's so interesting about this topic today is just me being intrigued by the age of people who win Angler of the Year. Now, maybe we could do a different discussion. And guys, if you liked our discussion with the man, Rob Newell, encourage us to do more if you do. So I think if you are in, that threshold of the 30s, I'm not saying you can't do it, but like you talked about, there's a 2-peak time period. And what I'm saying is this. I think wisdom in the end is going to come to the top. Wisdom and experience is going to come to the top. I do also believe that as much as 43 is the peak of Angler of the Year, that I still say the average age is still rapidly declining, which means getting younger, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they can maintain that peak level of 6 cents for 8 tournaments in a row. Because maintaining that peak of the 6 cents for 8 tournaments, that's mentally tough. That's hard to do. And if you can do that, that's why you have the people who have that it factor, they're going to have multiple ones. You can land in that one-hit wonder of Angler of the Year some, and, not even some. Look at how many one-hit one. I'm probably going to piss off the world. But it's not one-hit wonders because it was incredible year for them at the time, but maintaining that level. Like you see it in sports. All of a sudden this football team they never won a game. 2 years later, they won the Super Bowl or something like that. So there's always that factor. So, yes, guys, thank you for joining me and the Rob Newell in our first, could be more in this discussion. Let us know if you want us to talk deep. We're not talking news. We want to get deep into discussion of the bass fishing world. Thank you. And Rob probably won't want to do it, so I'm going to do it, and we will see you at another time.